Hi everybody, very welcome to Mentour and General Video Podcast. As always, I hope you're doing absolutely fantastic. Today on the video, guys, is the 737 new generation, the NG. Is it safe to fly? With all of these reports about wire bundles not being in the right place, about pickle-forks cracking, can we actually rely on it? Is it reliable? Stay tuned.
Wind 31016, everyone right, put on. Cardinal land 31 right. Delta 26.
This video is brought to you in cooperation with Skillshare. Now, I'm guessing that you're watching this video because you're a curious person. You need to find the details, you need to learn about things that you don't understand. And in that case, Skillshare is the perfect fit for you. If you use this link here below, you'll get 2 months of premium Skillshare absolutely for free, and that means thousands of high-quality video courses in pretty much any subject that you can imagine. Now, a course that I know that you guys will like is learning how to prepare for your PPL, for your private pilot license with Howard Forder. And I'll tell you how me and my son is using that later on.
Positive rate. Yeah.
Alright guys, so today we are going to be talking about the 737 new generation, the NG, and whether or not you can feel confident when you're getting on board one of these planes, given all of the media coverage that's pouring out of Seattle when they're going through the 737 MAX, and that's kind of drip feeding into the NG as well. The new generation is the second latest iteration of the 737. So it started with what we call the Jurassic model, which was the 737-100 and 200. They were then improved into the classic models, which were the 737-300, 400 and 500. And then they came into the new generation, which starts with the 737-600, 700, 800, 900, the BBJ, as in the Boeing business jets. The 737NG came about around 1996, and what they wanted to do there was, as always when the Boeing 737 is being upgraded, to improve on efficiency. And in the case of the NG, that was basically the wings. The wings was the big thing when the NG was upgraded. The wings became thinner, more aerodynamic, much more efficient. They also became much bigger. So they increased the wingspan with almost 5 meters, I think 4.88 meters, and that increased the overall wing area with about 30%. That meant that they could put more fuel into the wings, so that the longest range 737NG had almost 900 nautical miles higher range than the previous version. So this was a major improvement and made the NG into the absolute best seller of Boeing. To date, there's been about 7,000 NGs delivered, and up until recently, that was the most successful airliner ever built. I think now Airbus have gone past that in terms of orders, but still, the 737 was hugely commercially successful for Boeing, and that is largely because of its reliability. It's good economics and the fact that the 737 just runs, right? It is like an old Volvo. You can have malfunctions on it, we'll come to that in a second, but generally, those malfunctions are easily handled either by using our non-normal checklist or by checking with our minimum equipment list and see if we can go with it. And it's very, very robust. It just works. Like it's kind of where, you know how old cars, you used to have like you used a swivel to get the windows up and down, and in new cars you'll have a button, the button keeps braking but the swivels keeps working. That's kind of how the 737 and the 737NG was working. You still have to open the doors and the cargo doors manually. It's not a button you push, but it means that there's just one less thing that will break. It is very much old school and very, very reliable. Now, the recent reports that have come out of Seattle is largely due to the fact that the 737 MAX which is now being recertified to be re-entering service somewhere during 2020. And when FAA is doing that, they are very, very cautious. They basically go through every nook and cranny to make sure that they don't release an aircraft that will have another technical malfunction. And as they're doing that, you have to remember that the 737 MAX, while it is very different in some cases, the engines, the engine mountings, the MCAS, things like that, it is also essentially the same aircraft as the 737NG. So if they find something which is completely unrelated to the engines or the MCAS or anything like that, well then they will always check if the same configuration, the same way that the aircraft is built, also applies to the NG and the Classics. And if that's the case, they will put out what's called an airworthiness directive. This happened, and it happens on an almost weekly basis, right? At least a monthly basis, there is some kind of AD or some kind of instruction coming out from Boeing. And that is when they find something that is not completely according to what the original design was supposed to be. So in the case, for example, with the wires that was reported in the beginning of the week, whenever you build an aircraft, especially when you have to deal with the control of flight controls and things like that, if you have wires that controls it, so electrical wires that is activating hydraulic actuators, for example, then you have to have a backup. So in case something goes wrong with one electrical wire, well then you have a completely separate electrical wire running in a different place that can take up the slack. That is the whole philosophy with building aircraft, that you always have redundancy. Of course, in order to have redundancy, if you have electrical lines running, they need to be enough far away from each other, both to make sure that there's no arcing or anything happening in case of a wire breaking, or some kind of malfunction in them. But also, let's say that you have a toilet that breaks and it leaks water into the area where the electrical lines are running. Well, in that case, they also need to be separated so that if one electrical wire is being affected by being submerged in water, the other one is not. And in this case, it seemed that these two wire lines were too close to each other, or potentially too close to each other. Because the funny thing here is that there's not been an AD sent out. This means that the FAA, even though they've noticed that, okay, we might not like this, it's not even serious enough to send out an AD yet. Right? So this is a minor thing, but of course, since all of the world's media is now squarely focused on what's happening on the MAX, and anything that comes out of Boeing regarding this, they blow it up and out of proportion. So that's that. The pickle-forks is a little bit different. So I did a separate video about the cracks, the micro cracks that was found in the pickle-forks. You can check out the video up here. But essentially, this was during routine inspections of the NG. So this doesn't have to do with the MAX. This has to do only with the NG, where they found an aircraft that had about 30,000 cycles, a little bit more, which had these metal fatigue cracks in the pickle forks. That wasn't supposed to be there, because the pickle forks is part of the kind of structure of the aircraft. It's supposed to have the same life as the entire airframe does. So the fact that these cracks were coming up, first of all, does not indicate that the wings are about to fall off, right? You'd take a lot more than a couple of micro cracks for that, for the pickle forks to fail, and even if they do, there are 4 of them. So, but they shouldn't be there. And that sent out an airworthiness directive to check all of the aircraft that had 30,000 cycles and more, and even down to 22,000 cycles and more, but they had a little bit more slack on time, you know? But it just goes to show that, okay, they thought that this is how long it's going to hold. Turns out that it actually starting to develop cracks, and here's the fix for it. You cannot fly the aircraft when the cracks are found. They have to be sorted out, and it's being sorted out. That, just like in any industry, when they find something that needs to be sorted out, it gets sorted out. I'm not saying that it's not a serious thing, because it was a serious thing, otherwise the aircraft would not be grounded. But I'm saying that the what you're seeing is the kind of system working in the way that it's designed to be done. All right? When it comes to the accident that happened in Tehran 2 days ago, we're still waiting for the official comments back from what happened with that. But up until date, including that incident, the 737NG has had 10 fatal accidents, right? 10 fatal accidents. And that should be counted against the over 100 million movements that has been done by the 737NG during its lifetime so far. So it is very rare with incidents or accidents, including an NG. And the accidents that we've had, the fatal accidents that we've had, has been to a large extent due to human factor, due to pilot error, due to environmental reasons, or foul play. So the amount of technical failures that have happened on the NG relating to a death of a passenger or a crew member are extremely few. There was one last year, the Southwest airline that had a catastrophic engine failure, where part of, well, as a byproduct of the failure, a window was broken, and a passenger, female passenger sitting next to that window, got partially sucked out and was died due to the injuries that she sustained. So that would be an example of where an actual technical malfunction has led to a fatality. But in general, it tend to be things like loss of situational awareness by the pilots, misunderstandings, flying into really poor weather or thunderstorms or things like that, that leads to these hull losses. So all in all, what I want to get to here, guys, is that the 737NG has a failure rate, as in a fatal failure rate, of 0.09 per million movements. All right? To put that in perspective, the 777, the Boeing 777, has 0.2. The Airbus 320 have 0.1, so very similar to the 737NG. And these aircraft are basically the pinnacle of the safety of the modern airline industry. Extremely safe to fly. And why am I so sure of this then? Well, the answer to that is pretty simple. I have flown my entire career on the 737NG. I started back in 2002. I've flown for almost 18 years. The first couple of years I flew 900 hours per year. And my experience of flying this aircraft is that it is a great aircraft. It is reliable, it is robust. It can be a little bit complicated when it comes to remembering scan flows and the fact that you need maybe 7 different steps to start an engine. But that's just because it lies on the foundation of the safety of the entire 737 range, which has been flying since the 60s. Okay, it has been one of the most successful, safest airliners in the history of modern aviation, and I personally love flying this aircraft. Can it be improved? Absolutely. And the 737 MAX, I personally believe that once it is recertified and it has been checked thoroughly, as it should have been from the beginning, it will be even safer than what the NG was. I really believe that. But I have no problems going to work every single day, flying thousands of kilometers with hundreds of passengers behind me that is relying on me and my crew's professionalism. I perfectly trust the work of my engineers, the work of the engineers in Boeing who built the aircraft. I know that there will be things that breaks. It's inevitable. Anything that's built by human hands and has movable parts in it will eventually break. But I also know that when something does break, I know how to deal with it. I know that there's another system that will jump in, and if it is a critical system, there will definitely be 1, maybe 2 critical other systems that will take up the slack, and I can rely on it to bring the aircraft together with my colleagues and my passengers safely down to an airport where my engineering team can have a look at it, fix it, and once they say that it's been fixed and it's good, I will happily fly it again. Because if that's not the case, if you can't, as a pilot, trust the kind of material that you're flying, the airframe that you're flying, well, it's impossible to work. I have to constantly reevaluate the safety of the situation that I'm in. And I have perfect confidence in the 737NG. Okay? Cool. Now, some of you will be saying, well, I heard there was a lot of, there's a documentary out there about, some parts not being fitted correctly, about, different factories in the US producing sub-quality materials, things like that. I've seen those documentaries. They were disturbing. But the fact is that those airframes that were manufactured during the time that documentary was talking about, and mentioned by the whistleblowers, have largely disappeared out of usage already, and without any major problems. Like I said, the statistics of the 737NG speaks its clear language. There hasn't been any problems with them. That would have been noticed by now. And they're also, it's not like when you send out an aircraft into the world that all checks disappears. No, there are checks every number of cycles and every number of hours. They go through the aircraft again, check that all of these things are actually working like they should, that there are no metal fatigue cracks in the wings or in structural components. That's how the pickle fork issues was found in the first iteration, right? Because the aircraft are constantly being checked to make sure that they're safe to fly. So these are the kind of things that you have to keep in mind when you think of whether or not an aircraft is safe or unsafe. Right, guys, so if you want to find out if the aircraft that you're flying with is safe or not, the only thing you really need to ask yourself is what company are you flying with. If you're flying with a company that is certified to fly within the Western world, so flying into the European Union or into the United States, for example, that airline is being checked by those aviation authorities. Those aviation authorities have checked that they are following proper maintenance schedules, that their crews are properly trained, and that basically all of the little tick boxes are being ticked before they're allowed to enter the airspace. So if you're flying with an airline like that, it doesn't really matter what aircraft type that you'll be flying on. That type is considered to be safe, and the modern airlines out there and the modern airline world is extremely safe. Now, when I'm saying extremely safe, maybe it helps to give you a little bit of statistics to back that up. So if we're looking at different modes of transport, now I'm talking all types of aircraft in this example, the chance of dying counted on billions of passenger kilometers in a bus is 0.11, okay, per billion passenger kilometers. In a train, it's 0.15, and in an aircraft, it's 0.07. So statistically, flying an aircraft per passenger kilometer is safer even than taking the train. It might be hard to kind of wrap your head around figures like that, but it might help to say that if you would put yourself on a passenger flight every day for a whole year, and a passenger flight would be about 500 miles long, well, in that case, your chance of dying during that year is 1 in 85,000. Now, I promised in the beginning of the video that I will tell you how I am personally using Skillshare. And the fact is that my son, Lucas, who has his own YouTube channel called Luca Dicrus, you can check it out, he loves flying flight simulators. Don't know where he got that from. So for Christmas, me and my wife gave him a yoke, a throttle quadrant, and some pedals, so in order to make the kind of flying more real. The problem though is that when you're flying these simulators like X-Plane 11, for example, which he is flying, if you don't know what you're going to do, if you don't know the basics behind it, it's really, really hard to get anything out of it. So there is a course in Skillshare called How to Prepare for Your Private Pilot License with Howard Forder, which I mentioned before, where he basically uses a flight simulator and these things that I've just mentioned in order to prepare someone who is going for his or her private license. So that you're doing real kind of lessons. He is a certified flight instructor. He'll tell you how to do it and really make the most out of your flight simulator experience. But that's just one out of thousands of different courses that you'll get with Skillshare. If you're interested in creative writing or storytelling or photography, there are courses for that. And you can take part in workshops where you work with other people who are trying to achieve the same goals as you are with your learning. So those of you who are interested in checking this out, use this link here below. You'll get 2 months of premium Skillshare absolutely for free, so you can check it out and satisfy your curiosity. Have an absolutely fantastic day, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Right guys, I really hope that you liked that. If you want more content like that, more aviation content, well then, check this out. I hope that you have subscribed to the channel and that you've highlighted the little notification bell. See you inside of the Mentour Aviation app and have an absolutely fantastic day. Bye-bye.